I do really quickly want to come back to Jasmine, what you were talking about of in the last year. I mean, I think we all have kind of felt this pull of, yeah, can God reach us? Can God work on us in our daily personal life, in some of these personal practices we're talking about? Yes, when we aren't meeting together because of health risks. And I think obviously we all understand the context there, and I think that was good decision by a lot of churches to kind of come to that point pretty quickly. But then I would love to hear from all of us just what this experience of the last year has kind of maybe taught us about the importance of both personal practices, but then also these communal practices, because I felt kind of a similar thing of many different times over the last few months thinking, man, I just really miss being around people, and experiencing, my faith with other people in the same place. So yeah, I guess just kind of talk through what has the last year been like as it relates to kind of how you live out practices in your own life and around other Christians.
Yeah, so we switched churches in the midst of all of that, and so when we started going to our new church, we were doing services outside in the parking lot, and everybody was masked up. So I was happy that we could at least be together. Um, when a lot of churches weren't, it was nice to be outside. The weather was mostly good. We live in northern Indiana, so it's a little bit hit or miss sometimes. But one thing that it did, though, is I'm an introvert anyway, and so to be around all these people who I don't know with masks on, trying to respect each other's distance, it made it hard for me to feel connected. And I think my family felt the same way in a lot of ways. But we kind of rolled with it, and we're happy to have the opportunity to be part of this new church. And then as the time went on, especially this spring, as the weather started getting good again, I just started feeling this, man, I want to be with other people in church, worshiping and doing the things we do in church. I want to be with people and see people around me, like Karen said, just see people around me worshiping and praying and doing those things again. Um, Now, I grew up, again, the way I grew up is very focused on the individual, like your individual relationship with Christ. And I'm not discounting the importance of that, but I think in some ways it set me up to kind of be okay, or at least to feel like I was okay spiritually throughout this time, because it's all about me and God, right? Like I don't, I don't need other people. But the older I get, and um, the more I'm learning about the power of community and um, the need to do this together. Um, I'm seeing that I've got some work to do, because my introverted, individualistic self kind of wants to just stay on my own sometimes. Um, but I need to let other people in and experience some of these things with other people. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to whatever that looks like moving forward in our church. But even things like this are helpful for me because I'm hearing how other people kind of do community and worship with others, and so it's really helpful for me.
We too changed churches during this time, and I changed church staffs in this time. Um, and it all happened right about the time the world shut down. And so for that first handful of months or whatever, it was hard, but it was really healthy for me to have that downtime, I guess, that time where I could work through some things and let go of some things and get ready for some things. But it was a time that Tom and I, my husband and I, could worship together, even though we were doing it from home. We could pick, what service we're going to listen to or watch online and actually do that together, which is something with me being on a church staff, it wasn't anything that we had really been able to do for many, many years. So that was lovely to be able to, just be on the couch together and worship together. And then when things started opening up a little bit, I was having to meet new people and all masked. And like you said, Dan, that was hard, because you can't see smiles. And a lot of times I felt claustrophobic in a mask. And trying to, recognize people just by their eyeballs, the next time you see them and all that, that was hard. Got easier over time. But just a couple weeks ago, and this kind of goes with the community thing we were just talking about, our church wrote together a psalm. We're in this series now about practices, which is kind of interesting that we're talking about this now. But we were charged to reflect on the last 14 months. What did that look like? What were some good times? What were some hard times? What are some themes that ran through it? And, where did you see some times where you turned and did something different? And when we all came together, this was one of our first gatherings back together, people shared out loud, and it was beautiful to see people in the same room who had a lot of similar experiences, and they could, look at somebody and understand a little bit of where they were, and they could understand where you were. And then they took all these things and they wrapped it up. And at the end of the hour, we read this new psalm together. And it was one of the most beautiful things I've ever been a part of, I think, because it was like ours. And it was this shared experience, even though we hadn't been in the same room together in about a year. It was pretty cool. So it was a journey. That whole year was a journey.
So like I was saying earlier, the community experience of church has always been something that has been major in my life. So with that being something that I wasn't able to participate in was definitely hard. And Dan knows this, like my church is in Chicago, and like I'm so just like connected, impacted there with the community, just the experience. I would drive to Chicago every weekend just to go to church because that's something I needed. Like I needed that community. I needed that experience just to get through every week. So it was just huge to one, be in this shutdown where you can't really see people anyway, and then like not to get literally like my therapy, my like my good place, my quiet place, like the place that I needed to get what I need. So it was hard. Like I did watch and I kind of just like had to form new practices and like getting what I needed without the community around me, making my house a space for worship and not just feeling like I'm watching TV, So it was definitely super hard at first and just very just like, I don't know, sad I would feel, and just like definitely felt like I was missing something major. But then to just try to like make this into a new experience where like letting God fill me up and like rearranging my house in a way like that this is an altar. This is not my living room, I needed that. So yeah, it was definitely a hard experience. And I'm glad that we're getting back to things. My church actually, being in Chicago, they were a little slower than Indiana, just like how they handle different things. And so they're just now letting just like, you have to get like a ticket to come into service. And like, it's like a random selection thing. So they just started that process. So just hoping every week that I get that. But I have like started visiting different churches in this area just for that community feel, because I know like I've been missing that. So yeah.
Yeah, I think the last year for me was just really wrestling with a lot of like what my beliefs about church even were, right? Like, and again, as you've probably heard in some of my answers today, and some of the past podcast discussions we've had, there's a lot of baggage I think I have around some of the faith upbringing, that I came up in. And one of those was just this idea, which I think comes from a very good place. And again, I'm not knocking anybody who feels this way, but this idea that like when the church doors are open, you're there, Sunday morning, Sunday evening, Wednesday, if there's another midweek, so like whatever, when the church door is open, you're there. And at the beginning of the pandemic, I remember, I would see, friends posting on Facebook about their churches and, hearing from people that I grew up with. And I just remember having some, I mean, I don't anger. At first I'm thinking, is that too harsh a word? But I mean, if I'm being completely honest, and this was not good of me, but yeah, there was this anger of seeing people like, no, we're in a health crisis. Like, do we have to be meeting together? I remember thinking that a lot. And, but then, as the whole experience went on, I just kind of came to realize, yes, yeah, God can speak to us, individually. And I think God can work with us in many different formats, right? It doesn't have to come within the church walls, but what happens within those church walls is so important. That community, I think I had kind of forgotten, yeah, the true power and the true, reason for that. And Jasmine, yeah, a lot of what you're saying, like I I've seen that, especially over the last, yeah, I'd say 7 or 8 months of, yeah, Sarah and I would listen to the church podcast. And I remember even Easter 2020, we had like, a special Easter service where there was like recipes that people from the church, sent in. And Sarah and I love cooking. So like that was a really cool communal practice, even though we weren't all together. But that can only go so far, right? You can, as much as you try to replicate that in-person feeling, like there's nothing like it. And so I would say I went through this process of, yeah, at first being kind of frustrated with, no, we don't have to be within the church walls to experience God, right? And I believe that. I think that's true. But at the same time, you can't discount the importance of being in a community with other people, of hearing their experiences, right? Like if I just get stuck in my own ways of doing things and my own ways of thinking, like we're seeing here, like I miss out on so much of what other people are experiencing and how they're living out their faith. And that really only happens, in a church context is the best way, maybe, that happens. So yeah, it was a very interesting year for me, a humbling year of realizing, yeah, that I was, maybe being a little bit harsh, a little bit quick to forget, just how impactful church is. And I'm the same way. I'm so excited to be getting back into that regular practice and getting back, around other Christians. So yeah, it's been an interesting year for all of us, I think we could say.